that we took for granted.
This call is from a federal prison.
First, I gotta live through this situation.
There's a lot of sick people in here, and nobody cares anymore.
I have to survive. Gotta survive in here.
We are human. We've made mistakes, but that doesn't mean that our lives are any less valuable than the next person's.
That right there was a promo from the Reform Alliance, which is an organization that's really putting a spotlight on what's going on in our prison systems today, a lot of injustice that we're starting to see, and stepping out and speaking forward and bringing the conversation and making people aware of a lot of what's happening behind bars to our brothers and sisters. And one of the leaders of the Reform Alliance is with us today, and just one of the leaders in our community, somebody who speaks out unapologetically, extremely informed, and he's protected by the Almighty. The one and only Van Jones is on the line with us. Give him a big round of applause.
Van.
What up, Van? Good to be here. Good to be here. Feeling blessed. And like I said, I always say I'm safe, I'm supplied, and I'm symptom free. So that's all. That's my prayers every morning, and I'm good.
Reform has really put the spotlight on folks who are unjustly treated in the criminal justice system. And I'm happy to say that I actually get emails from Van Jones from time to time just to check in to say what's up, because I really appreciate your work and you keep me informed about a lot of information and always encouraging me to do the research, so on and so forth, which is why I support what the Reform Alliance does. Being a member of the Last Mile, which is a organization that's going in the prison system and teaching those behind bars who care to learn how to code. So when they leave prison, they'll have a viable asset to help them transition back into civilian life. I've had a chance to go in and out of a bunch of prison systems from the Midwest to West Coast, from San Quentin to the East Coast, and the conditions that I've witnessed are horrific at best. Sometimes, I've never spent the night in jail. One of the things that the Reform Alliance has been talking about is how COVID is affecting people behind bars. So I want to turn the floor over to you, Van, and tell us, where are we right now in this country with the coronavirus, and also what has Reform Alliance been doing to bring awareness and to help people who are behind bars?
Well, first of all, I'm just proud to be a part of the Reform Alliance. Jay-Z and Meek Mill and Robert Smith and Robert Kraft, Mike Rubin, Clara Wu Tsai, Mike Novogratz, Stan Loeb, real heavy hitters got together about a year and a half ago to put together, a multi-million-dollar campaign to do something about what's happening in our criminal justice system, especially the fact that people kept going back to prison for little minor probation violations, technical parole violations, not even committing new crimes, people who were going on with their lives, getting caught up in the paperwork and going back to prison. So we thought that was a big enough deal to move on with 4 million people caught up in the probation and parole system because of people's liberties being lost for no reason or for dumb reasons. Now people's lives could be lost because when you're sending people back to prison now, the prisons are full of the virus. And so people are literally losing their lives over very, very minor stuff. So the Reform Alliance has jumped in. We did put out that PSA, which I appreciate you supporting and pushing out there, and others did as well. Madonna, like a whole bunch of people jumped on that earlier this week. Jack Dorsey from Twitter, the billionaire from Twitter, gave us $10 million so we could try to rush in masks into every jail and prison in the U.S. to try to protect people. And we're also working with 26 governors to try to get people out through the Reform Alliance. People who are old, people who are sick before the virus even got there, people who have minor offenses should be sent home to home confinement. And we've been working with our allies and elected officials. We've gotten about 40,000 people out of jails and prisons so far, with a long way to go. And so that work, recognizing that the people behind bars, people keep saying, well, Van, I can't even figure out how to, teach my kids at home. You know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to, keep toilet paper in my house. Why are you talking about people in prison? I just always say, listen, first of all, we have the biggest prison population in the history of the world, 2.2 million people. Every one of them is a human being. None of them were sentenced to die by a virus in a U.S. jail. None of them, no matter what they did. And a lot of them are in there just for minor stuff anyway. So that's a humanitarian crisis if they all start dying. But number two, the guards have to come in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Food services have to come in and out. So you can't defeat the virus outside the prison and let it run rampant inside the prison. And you're now seeing across the country, all those little communities near prisons are becoming hot spots just like the prisons are. The last thing I'll say is, mass matters. You got 2.2 million people all in close quarters. They can't self-isolate. They're all packed in there like sardines. The virus moves 5 to 15 times faster through that population than through a regular population, which means all of them are going to get sick faster, which means you only got 30,000 hospital beds. You got 2.2 million people getting sick. You could knock out the entire healthcare system, the entire hospital system, because, you're not taking care of this population properly. So the Reform Alliance is very proud to be, working with all these governors, to be working with influencers, getting masks in, raising awareness. But it's our people on the front lines, from the grocery stores to the nurses to the homeless shelters to the even our athletes and our entertainers are getting knocked out because they can't play basketball, they can't play football, and they can't do concerts. So it's African Americans and people of color whose health and whose wealth is getting battered by this virus. And we need to come together and make sure that we are rushing protection and awareness to those places that are hurting the most.
Hey, Ben, thank you so much for the work that you guys are doing and for the funds that you guys are raising. Also, too, shout out to my homegirl, Adia, who's also working with you guys over there. Mm-hmm. When it comes to, I'm glad you mentioned the rural communities, and we've been covering this a lot on our show. We talked about it from the urban cities aspect, the big cities, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, but always been talking about and how the apex, when we get into big cities, they'll be about 3 weeks behind for the rural communities, and how much the rural communities need to be on notice due to the prison population and also to the meat processing population in the rural counties. Particularly, we've been focusing on Tennessee's Truesdale County, which is home to one of the largest prisons in Tennessee. So the question I have, though, is, about the mask going into the prison, are there any guidelines that are being discussed right now? Because we're receiving CDC federal guidelines regarding how to open up businesses, but are there any guidelines being written by the federal government or the CDC on how the prison should be operating and functioning? Because it's one thing to give masks, but there's no other procedures put in place, then the mask just becomes a Band-Aid.
Well, we are the authors of the so-called SAFER plan at the Reform Alliance, which is a 7-page document full of all kinds of recommendations and policies to reduce overcrowding, to have safe and humane ways of keeping people, separated from each other without putting them in the hole. And I mean, it's very, very comprehensive. And we got the National Governors Association to adopt our ideas. We got the White House to adopt a good chunk of those ideas, and even the Correctional Leaders Association, which is that's the association for all the prisons, adopted a huge chunk of our ideas. Implementation has been very, very difficult, and so we have to be as sophisticated as the system that we're trying to change. And so we don't, when Jack Dorsey gives us $10 million and Jay-Z says we're sending masks into the prisons, we get a lot of attention. And people say, well, why are you only sending in masks? Why are you only sending in masks? It's just a Band-Aid. But when we're working with, some governor you've never heard of in some state you've never been to, that doesn't get the same amount of attention. But we do have a comprehensive, our strategy is get as many people out as possible. Stop them from sending people back in for just dumb stuff. Give people a ticket. Why are you arresting people and putting them in harm's way? And why are you putting your officers in harm's way? Arresting people on ticky-tack nonsense. Give people tickets and keep it pushing until this plague is over. And then lastly, while you're taking people out, you can't get everybody out. You've got to rush in masks and other PPE so people can't protect themselves. But nothing is happening at the scale it needs to. Nothing's happening at the speed that it needs to. Even those governors and other people who are responding are not responding with the urgency and the courage that they need to. So we need to comprehensively, get a lot louder about this, because it's going to be the curve is flattening in the United States overall. It is not flattening inside of these 7,000 jails and prisons. And every single jail and prison could be another New York. And then everybody around that prison is going to be in danger, not to mention the people we love inside.
Van, let me ask you this too, because I have friends and family members who are incarcerated, and a lot of times they have the ability to actually communicate from within. And I'm hearing all of these different kind of stories. A lot of folks are just scared because they feel like they're being ignored. And a lot of us who are in civilian population, it's easy to ignore people who are behind bars. It's almost like they're a forgotten population because you don't have direct communication. You don't have direct contact. I'm not one of those people. I don't have that luxury or that desire to ignore folks. Like you said, they're human beings. What kind of stories are you hearing from within? People who are reaching out from you, those who are incarcerated?
Well, it's heartbreaking, and you and I go back and forth on email and everything else. When I find stuff, I send it to you, and so it's really, really heartbreaking. I mean, people are really, really, really terrified. Can you imagine how much anxiety you feel if you had to get on a city bus right now? Imagine how much anxiety you might feel if you had to get on the subway right now, or if you just had to be, packed into a line at the supermarket. Well, that's 24/7 if you're in prison. People are coming, they're going, they're moving people around. People, I think people still think that somehow, these old TV shows we used to watch in the 70s, where people had two people in a cell and everybody had like a library. I mean, no, they got people in there, 6, 7 people in a cell that's, not that much bigger than a phone booth. And then because of the virus, people are trying to lock people down. So we're getting really, really terrible, stories, and people are getting sick. I got a very close friend who tested positive, but he was asymptomatic. Now he's actually been sick. They can send emails sometimes, but now they're on either one call a day or one email a day. So it's a lot that's going on. And we just need to we need to make sure that the politicians who are afraid, if they let one person out and that person does something wrong, that they're going to get in trouble. In New York City, they of the people that they did let out, 98% have done perfect. When I say perfect, I don't just mean they didn't get in trouble, they didn't shoot nobody. I mean they have reported perfectly, like reported in, checked in, home confinement, is being taken as an option in New York City, and people are doing really well with it. Do you have, out of those tens of thousands of people, some people who've been knuckleheads? Yeah. But what if all those tens of thousands of people had died? We have to have some kind of a balance here. And so, but I think politicians need to be more afraid of letting 100,000 people die behind bars because they're cowards than letting people out when most of the people who come out have been doing a good job. And that's one of the reasons why we're having this special tonight on CNN, the Color of COVID special at 10 p.m. on the East Coast, 7 p.m. on the West Coast, because a lot of these issues that we're talking about, we don't get a chance to really get into in detail. There's a lot of stuff happening in our community behind this virus, both in terms of our health and in terms of our wealth, that we have not gotten a chance to get into, and that's why we're having this special tonight.
I know that you had Charles Barkley. You spoke with Charles Barkley on the Color of COVID, and y'all got into an interesting conversation about blaming the system or not. And I want to play a clip from it real quick. This is Van Jones, The Color of COVID, featuring Charles Barkley on Sway in the Morning.
Anytime we say something about black people, we get blowback. And listen, I'm very proud to be black, always have and always will. But there is personal responsibility. I can't get fat and obese and then say, yeah, the system made me fat. It doesn't work like that.
We have had black women in our community who have been telling us, hey, drink the healthy food. We call them hoteps and push them off to the one side. It turns out that the hoteps in our community were correct. The ones telling us to eat to live and put down the sugary drinks. And so we don't have the resources in our community, but we can be resourceful. And there have been people in our community begging us for years to take it seriously. So I think this virus is trying to teach us about wellness and about oneness.
That was Charles Barkley. I mean, it could be a little more layered than that, though, when it comes to eating healthy. It's also an issue of resources and access to.
The thing about it is, we had a comprehensive conversation where we got into different parts of it. If you look at the whole special, which was an hour long, we got into the food deserts and all that kind of stuff. People love to take one clip, especially somebody like Charles Barkley, because he's so colorful and he's so provocative. They kind of take one thing, he said, oh, well, see, he's not acknowledging this, that, the other, and the third. But if you look at the whole special, we did acknowledge all that stuff. And it's a delicate conversation. Look, black people don't want to feel that we're being blamed for our own victimhood. We don't want to feel that somebody's going to come to us, well, y'all just should have better health and y'all should just make better choices, when we get put in the worst jobs with the most exposure, all these so-called essential workers. I haven't seen a white person working outside their house in L.A. in 2 months. Every time somebody knocks on my door to bring me a package, it's a person of color. They're taking a risk. Every time I see one of these city buses drive by, it's a person of color. They're taking a risk. Whenever I go to a grocery store, the people standing there facing the virus all day are all 100% people of color taking the risk. And then we have these bad jobs, and then we don't have good health insurance. And then when we do talk to the doctors, they don't give us the same advice that they give the white folks. And it can be expensive, especially if you got to go 5-6 neighborhoods over to find a Whole Food or a healthy store. So, yes, there are structural reasons that you did not create and I did not create that put our health more at risk. And every single one of us can today make at least a choice to eat one less potato chip or drink one more glass of water. Mm-hmm. Both of those things can be true at the same time. And we can't be so one-sided about it as to say it's all personal responsibility or it's all structural racism. It's mostly structural racism, but even when we have bad choices, we still have choices to make. And we've got to make the best choices that we can for our family. And that's, I think, what Charles was trying to get you.
Van Jones is here. He'll be hosting the CNN Presents The Color of COVID alongside Don Lemon tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. West Coast. Mike Muse, you want to jump back in?
Yeah, man, I just had a quick question for you. I know we were pushing to get race-based data associated with COVID-19 deaths so they can do better targeted communication and strategies and come up with effective public health policies. I'm curious, are the prisons giving out any data in terms of the number of confirmed cases and also the number of deaths by chance?
It's such a mess because we don't have one prison system. You got the federal system, which is about 10% of everybody locked up, and then the rest of them are spread out through the other 50 states. So you've got, about 6,000 plus prisons and jails, and all of them have different everything. And so so it's been this data problem that you're talking about, that has been the bane of our existence. And we need to have some federal guidelines. Every jail, every prison, and frankly, every detention center needs to have a uniform reporting structure that everybody can adhere to. It needs to be transparent because we're out here. We know more information about some of these jails and prisons than the governors over the states do, just because, like Sway said, we're talking to real people. We have more facts and more data sometimes than the governor or the person who's running the Department of Corrections. That should not be the case. And so, the data thing is a big, big problem, and it's not being solved.
Hey, Ben, we have a lot of people who are listening who may have loved ones who are currently locked up in jail, in prisons currently right now. And what we're seeing is some individuals are receiving release, compassionate release, due to either the threat of COVID-19 and possibly because they have a low jail sentence. How can, for a solution for those who are listening, I know it isn't a one-size-fits-all, but can you talk to us about the narrative if families want to help get their loved ones out? How can they do it? Who should they be calling? They need to call their attorney again? Is it city officials? Can you talk to us, if you know any at all, and the best way to help get a loved one out for COVID-19 related release?
Well, sure. Well, listen, there are compassionate release options now because of the First Step Act, which we got passed on a bipartisan basis, and Trump signed about 18 months ago. But you do have to have a lawyer, and it's not as easy as it should be. It's a lot easier than it would have been without the bill. The best thing I can tell people to do is just to text the word empathy, 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 to 97483. That's 97483. Cut 50, one of the organizations I helped to get started in the criminal justice space, which is unbelievable, has an empathy network. And they got a lot of jailhouse lawyers and real lawyers and activists all across the country. And they are working very hard to help people. So, again, you can text the word empathy to 97483, 97483, and somebody from Cut 50 Empathy Network will get back to you.
Okay, we have Van Jones from the Reform Alliance. Bizzle, you taking in all this information. I can hear you breathing.
No, I am. I'm taking in. Hey, Van and Mike Muse, thank you. I'm taking in a lot of information, but Van said something that sort of like I was like, He mentioned the women and women trying to tell us things, and for the past couple of weeks, Van, I've been working closely with women's shelters. And surprised during this COVID. What women need and if their needs as females during this time, and the need for hygiene products and feminine products. And I know you've been talking about the prison system. Have you guys been able to reach out and help with the women in prison as well? Not discounting the men at all, but just wondering how's it been working with the women?
Yeah, Cut 50, again, the organization I was just mentioning, has worked on these things called Dignity for Incarcerated Women bills. And we've gotten more than a dozen of those bills passed, including in states like Georgia. We got working with our allies, we got the entire Georgia state legislature unanimously to adopt a Dignity for Incarcerated Women bill, and we even got that governor down there to sign it, and which is unbelievable. And so there about 40% of the women behind bars now have rights and opportunities that they did not have before our campaign for Dignity for Incarcerated Women, but it's not enough, and there's still more than half of the women who still do not have the right to, not be shackled when they're giving birth to children, don't have the right to sanitary, it's just unreal what we do to women behind bars. And so, but that's been a major focus of our work over the past few years, and even the First Step Act, which wound up having letting 8,000 people come home from prison early and a whole bunch of other stuff. It started out as a conversation about dignity for incarcerated women, and then it grew from there. So I'm seeing now with people like Topeka Sam and other formerly incarcerated women, their voices rising is changing the agenda.
Van Jones is here. We have Clark on the line from New York. Clark, good morning. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning, Sway. How you doing, Van Jones?
Very good.
I was just I had a comment because I was at what we said earlier. I was first of all, I come from a big. I'm white, but I cut my. I have grandchildren that are half black, half Mexican. I have cousins that are I have a mixed breed of family. You know what I mean? So it just depends. I think the area, because you said made a good point that there are at least a lot of jobs are out there where you're at for minorities. Because you said you haven't seen one white person doing an essential job. So that's a positive. I took a positive out of that, but where I'm at, essential workers. I see all colors. I'm not trying to, I just see all colors. It's just I see this human beings out there just doing good for essential jobs that have to get done for other people of color or any color. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to, point out that positive that there at least there's jobs. At least there's jobs at a minimum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I see it a little bit differently in that. I think that there are good jobs out here and there are tough jobs out here, and the good jobs should not, where people can work from home and get paid well and be safe, shouldn't be only for the white folks, and the tough jobs shouldn't be only for people of color. It should be a fair mix. So I agree it's good that people have jobs, but I think people should be able to have good jobs, and it should be fair in terms of who gets which jobs.
Hey, Clark, too, I want to invite you to watch the show tonight, CNN Presents The Color of COVID with Van Jones and Don Lemon. That's coming on at 10 p.m. And, Clark, you're a citizen.
That's way in the morning.
All right, so that's 10 p.m. tonight Eastern and 7 o'clock West Coast time. Hey, Van, keep up the work, bro. Stay out there.
Hey, listen. Hey, thanks for having me. Hope you check us out again. Like you said, 10 o'clock tonight on CNN, East Coast. Okay. Me and Don Lemon.
And if you got any questions for Van, you can hit him up directly. A lot of people on the phone lines. Can you give out your social handle, Van?
Sure. It's just at Van Jones 68. Van Jones 68, the year I was born, on all social, Instagram, Twitter, all of it.
All right, Van. Stay up. Stay strong. Hey, Van, get some balance too, man. You need some balance. All right.
Yes, sir. Okay. You got to help me with that. But we'll keep talking. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
We'll keep talking. My man Van Jones.